Welcome to our partner call. Today we're gonna have a bit of a theme going today, and actually I'm not gonna tell you what the theme is, but we'll wrap up with just a review of what it could have been at the end of the call. I shared with some of you that some days you have those days where you feel like you're playing from behind. Anyone have those days? Just me? Jay says all the time. Well, hopefully by the end of today, it won't be all the time. But yeah, we all do. I had one yesterday, and about 7:30, 7:45, I sat down and I said, "Man, I need to knock out a partner call for tomorrow." And I went back through some of my notes and some of my reading this past week, and there was definitely this theme of what happens, what good can come from playing from behind. So really, we're going to share some stories today. Today's going to be some storytelling, but there's going to be actually a tactical conversation as well that I wanted to have absolutely with the group. But before we do that, let's jump in like we always do, and let's talk about gratitude. Who or what are you grateful for this morning, September 25th, and who wants to share with the team? Alex, go ahead.
Like we were just talking about earlier, I'm grateful for the team that we have built, because of the production, but also just because, like, for example, Jolene helped me pick out my first dance. Carter has been keeping me sane through the tough time trying to plan a wedding in the middle of a pandemic. And Phil has just always been that steady rock there from the beginning. So this team is great when it comes to production, but it's also great when it just comes to family and everything. And I deeply appreciate each and every one of y'all for doing what little part y'all may have played in getting me to this day. So thank you for everything.
Awesome. Well, congrats, Alex, and thanks for sharing that. We're grateful for the relationships we've built outside of just business. So appreciate that greatly. Chris.
Yeah, good morning. I'd unmute. I just wanted to say I'm grateful for my two script partners, Lindsay Pearlstein and Kosman Hosu. They're both very different places in the industry, and they challenge me every single time we talk, and I learn something new every time I talk with them as well.
Awesome. Thanks, Chris. Thanks for sharing that. Glad you're here. Who else? Who else is grateful this morning and wants to share their gratitude? Go ahead and raise your hand, then I'll be able to unmute you. Katie?
Can you hear me?
I can.
Perfect. I've got a run of them actually today. I had some one-on-ones on Tuesday, and there's just a couple of people that stood out to me. Baruch Rosenberg, Kosman Hosu, Chris Clark, who just talked, Oscar Callejo, Martha Robles. And what's amazing about these people and what they have in common is each of them is, challenging who they've been in the past such that they can shift their internal behavior, their internal identity, if you will, into somebody that is a top producer. And that's not an easy thing to do because, right, it requires awareness and self-examination, and those aren't super fun things sometimes. And I just was really impressed and grateful for them because every time somebody does that, it's like this light, right? It shows you what's possible. And then I also want to share some gratitude for Adelina for doing my Facebook Live in about a couple hours. So thank you, Adelina, for being willing.
Awesome. Speaking of Adelina, next week you will not want to miss our partner call. We're gonna have a conversation with Adelina from her takeaway from doing a 4-day MBA with Keith Cunningham. And last week we shared some takeaways from his interview with Gary, but Adelina really put herself out into a growth commitment and took 4 days and jumped into an MBA program, a deep, difficult, and heavy program that Keith Cunningham does. So we're going to all live vicariously through her growth opportunity. I'm slightly jealous that she got to do it, and I'm glad that she's here to be able to share. So don't miss next week. Matt, one more gratitude, and then we'll jump into our values.
Yes, sir. Thanks, Chris. My gratitude today is for Miss Katie Benson. We all know what a gift and a gem she is to not only our industry and our company, but to each one of us individually. Earlier this week, to join our team to talk about empowerment, our big why, and she just led us through conversation, asked great questions as Katie always does, and every person on our team walked away with some great motivation and inspiration for the future.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing. You know, it's interesting. I think, you know, many in our organization are just like that. Katie leads by example, and I am shocked how many people that woman is able to touch in a week, and really pouring into so many people. Right? I hear, oh, Katie jumped on a call, and Katie zoomed in, and Katie, like, I'm like, oh my gosh, how does she do what she does? So incredibly grateful to have had her by my side as a partner for the last decade. And also even probably more grateful for her to say yes to just really diving in and launching expansion. And no matter how crazy of ideas I had along the way, and now Ben and I have together, Katie says yes and jumps in and makes it happen and just pours into more people. So I'm just incredibly grateful for her being willing to do that, regardless of the ideas that we come up with. So thank you, Matt. Incredible gratitude. And I'm right there with you with that gratitude. All right, guys, let's talk about our values. Dina Dwyer says that values bring value, right? And it's oftentimes because values in an organization on paper, we don't see where it brings us from the red to the black. We don't spend time there. We don't talk about them. Well, in our organization, we believe the only reason why we are in the black is because we are a values grounded organization. So where this week did you see in any area of our values, where did you see any of our values demonstrated? Who stepped up and really demonstrated those values by thinking about it, by looking for it, we stay focused on them. And actually by acknowledging those values in others, it allows us to demonstrate them the week after as well. Let's start with Joel.
Hey, good morning, Chris. Hey, I want to recognize Kristen Williams, our leader on the Williams team, for opportunity. And it's opportunity in a way I see it as growth for us, for coaching moments. She always finds a way to bring to light coaching moments for us to grow, whether it be where we can get better at something or where we've excelled at something, and she sees we can duplicate that to continue to have success. So big shout out to her for opportunity of coaching for us.
Awesome. Love that. Thank you, Joel. Thanks for sharing. Holly.
Good morning, everybody. I have two different values that I'd like to recognize. First, I would like to recognize the value of giving. Another big, it's a gratitude and a value, mentioning Katie again, Christine Ritchie and Phil Gasca, all were on board and presenting to market centers this week. Especially excited to see Christine in my very own market center, but giving their time and their expertise to others. I also want to recognize Jordan Lindenkugel in Lubbock, Texas, for the value of growth. If y'all been paying attention, Jordan has taken real estate to a whole nother level, and it's just been on fire. And part of that growth journey is she's starting to build her team out and really has dug in and is being thoughtful in the approach, and really love seeing that growth and seeing that transformation from being a real estate agent to a CEO.
Awesome. Love that. Thank you, Holly. David.
Hey, good morning, everybody. Chris Marciano demonstrates this value of humility. I swear he's more excited about me succeeding than even himself. And that, again, just is a testament to how he's wired as an agent that's been around for a long time. And me being a new agent, it's super helpful having people right beside you demonstrating this, this trait, but also really rooting for you. So thanks, Chris.
Love that. Thank you, David. Thanks for sharing that. And we're going to do one more, and then we're going to jump in. Carter.
Hey, good morning, Chris. want to give a shout out to Alex Frank. Alex talked a little bit earlier. It's his wedding weekend, and not only because of that, his growth that he's showing in the way that he's going about his business. In Q3, we had a challenge of seeing how many pieces of business, how many homes can get under contract, and he just about equaled in Q3 what he did in Q1 and Q2 combined. And so I just want to just give him a quick shout out for the growth that he is exhibited and that he continues to do and bring to the table. And congratulations on the wedding.
Awesome. It's funny how a little bit of motivation and necessity shows up in our lives. I'm constantly reminded of the book that we read, 3 years ago together, and we had Brendan Burchard do a quick video for our team after that book, High Performance Habits, came out. And the one that I always believe has been one of the strongest habits for me is that habit of necessity, right? When you have necessity in your life, it absolutely will drive you to perform at a higher level. And all high performers, whether the necessity was forced upon them or they looked for it and created it in their world, creating necessity will drive performance. So Alex just decided to go out and get married and create necessity that way. So that's one way to do it. All right, guys, let's jump in. We're gonna have a real estate conversation first. And here's what I wanted to talk about. I want to talk about commission. It's interesting. Some of us love talking about commission, and others get nervous talking about commission because we get nervous anytime we need to talk about money or ask someone to talk about money. But the more comfortable we are talking about commission from a mindset perspective, the more likely your commission will go up. Here's what I noticed across the organization. Year to date, we are doing incredibly well. We have held our commission very, very strongly as an organization. I believe that comes from two things. It comes from understanding our value, and it also comes from knowing our presentation and our scripts, right? It's knowing what your value is to the industry and to the client, and it's knowing our presentation and our scripts. Now, we've been sharing with you that we intend by next week to roll out and get out to everybody a brand new listing presentation. And so along with that listing presentation will come coaching and training and certification, and we are going to be masters. Like, there is no doubt in my mind that our organization, well, there's no doubt in my mind that we always have, but there is definitely no doubt now moving forward that our organization will have the greatest listing presentation of anybody out there in the industry. And it's up to us individually to commit to learn it, to practice it, to know it, and to deliver it the same way. Year to date, our organization is at 2.71% across every single closed unit. Literally, right, I believe thousands now, closed units, 2.71 commission rate. Now that's above the industry, right? So we are outperforming the industry as a whole. Congratulations. When I look at our pending sales, we're at 2.65% commission rate, right, across the organization. So at close, we're at 2.71. At pending, we're at 2.65. Now, data eliminates drama, right? And the reason why we track so well in our organization is because we look for these small nuances in our business and we say, let's jump in, let's address it, let's coach to it, let's have the conversation early so that 6 months down the road, 9 months down the road, a year down the road, we don't look like a brokerage that says, well, gosh, our commission split has dropped from 2.7 to 2.6 or 2.8 to 2.5. And here's why. Because if everything we had closed to this point was at 2.65 instead of 2.71, do you know across our network, our agents would have earned just over $1 million less income? Put in perspective, 2.65, 2.71, sometimes we think, hey, what's the big difference? Put in perspective, shared across this organization would be $1 million less in revenue. That is a lot of money. I want everyone to get out a pen. I'm going to give you some numbers. I talked to a few of you earlier this week, and I said I promised to share with you how to increase your income anywhere from about $80,000 to $350,000 this year. Your choice, depending on what you're willing to do and your level of activity. But I'm going to give you some numbers. Let's on the piece of paper in front of you write down just let's assume, and I get it, we're all over the country now, right? But across the board, our organizational average sales price as of today is about $360. But let's just write $350 for math's sake, right? $350,000 is the average sales price. Now, yours might be $4, yours might be $1 million, right? We have some people there. Yours might be 180 or 190 or 270. That you can do the math later, but let's assume your average sales price is $350. And let's assume on average, you're at about a 2.5% commission rate. I use that number because that is where your industry, our industry is trending towards. That means your average commission per deal is $8,750. So if you're a visual person, write it down. If you're an auditory person, well, you just heard it and you internalize that number and you got it. But that's your average commission on a $350,000 sale. I'm not talking take home, I'm just talking total revenue, 2.5%. Now, here's what's interesting. If you average 2.75%, your average commission would be $9,625. So you can write that number down. If you average 3%, your average commission would be $10,500. You can write that number down. If you average 3.25%, your average commission would be $11,375. I share that number and some of you are like, yeah, right. But some of our agents in this organization are averaging 3.2. If you average 3.5% commission, which would require a 6% commission every time, keeping 3.5 potentially, right, on the listing side, you would get $12,250 per listing. Now, oftentimes we think in terms of percents and we immediately go 1%, 1%, 1%, 1%. I see that all the time, right? When we're challenged on our commission, we go from 6% to 5%, instead of 6 to 5.75, or 6 to 5.5, or 5.7 to 5.25. Don't think in terms of 1%. I want us to begin thinking in terms of 0.25%. If you are giving something up, don't think in terms of 1%. Think in terms of 0.25%. But the fact is let's say you're an individual agent, right? You're an agent or you're an agent on the team and you're going to do 24 listings a year, right? You're going to do 2 listings a month. Over time, just a 0.25% difference in your commission rate will equate to $21,000 a year. $21,000 a year. Put it away for college. That's a rental, down payment. $21,000 a year, a 0.25%. Fight for a 0.25%. A 0.5% differential on your average listing commission, guys, on 2 deals a month is $42,000 a year. It's close to the average income in America, guys, $42,000 a year. And what's the differential? Well, how well you know your presentation and your script. Going from 2.5 to 3.2. Now that's a highly skilled listing agent, right? It's a differential of $63,000 a year for just an agent doing 2 deals a month. And to going from a 1% difference, right? 2.5% on the listing side to 3.5% on the listing side, $84,000 a year doing 2 deals a month. Now, for those of you that are responsible for bringing in 100 deals, right? We have countless teams. We have 50 different teams, right? That'll do 100 or more transactions. Many of those will do 100 listings. You know what the difference is? At a 0.25%, 100 listings, about $90,000. Going from 2.5 on the listing side to 3.5% on the listing side, about $350,000 a year. How easy do we adjust our yearly income transaction by transaction by transaction? I talked to some of your leaders this week and asked them what's the number one thing that will drive listing conversion? You know what Jolene said? Do you know the listing presentation inside and out? Do you know the listing presentation inside and out? Because if you do, our listing presentation is set up to explain value, right? I am certain, even based on our script, so if we can dialogue through our value, no one will question your fee, right? So number one, do you know the listing presentation inside and out? John Powers, you know what he said? Do you know your scripts inside and out? Do you know your scripts inside and out? So we're not going to have a scripting conversation, but I would challenge everybody, right? With your script partners this week, talk about commission, go through commission scripts. On our stand-ups this week, we're going to be talking about commission. On your with your teams, talk about commission. Interestingly enough, right? Oscar just said, work smarter, not harder in the chat. The fact is when you play out those numbers, when you do a little bit of math in your business and look at your average commission versus what it could have been / should have been, ask yourself how many more homes you need to list, how many relationships you need to have, how many more transactions you need to do just because you decided that you didn't want to put in the time to learn the listing presentation, get certified in the listing presentation, learn those scripts, or be able to challenge, right? Challenge yourself to maintain your listing commission. Here's a few conversations. I'm not even going to call them scripts, but here's a few conversations I like to have when challenged on commission. One of the conversations we are constantly hearing right now is that the other agent said they'll do it for less. Even before they challenge you, right? More and more people are interviewing and more agents are willing to do what? Cut their commission. In fact, that's probably the biggest objection we get right now. The other agent will. My immediate response to that always is coming from a thoughtful response. And I will say, can I explain to you why that concerns me? Now, write that down. Can I explain to you why that concerns me? The reason why that sets the tone for a healthy commission conversation is all of a sudden it eliminates it from a money conversation to a concern conversation. I have just finished my presentation. I have shown them that I care about them. If I follow the script, I have asked them literally, right, tens upon tens upon tens of questions. And hopefully I've listened incredibly well so they know I care about them. Now money comes up. And it has the potential to turn that into just a purely financial conversation. So I say, can I explain why that concerns me? Second question, do you own anything more valuable than this home? Now, the majority of the people do not. Maybe they do, maybe it's another home, but the majority do not, right? Do you own anything more valuable than this home? Well, no. Could you say that it's one of your most valuable possessions? That's a yes. Then my concern is that the other agent has already shown you his or her negotiation skill. One of the things we've already agreed is perhaps the most important reason why you should hire me. Because if that other agent can't negotiate a full fee for the value that they're giving you, can you imagine what might happen when you put that person in control of negotiating your home's value, your equity, and your financial future? That's my biggest concern for you. So the real question is not what my fee is, but is that other person the right person to sit across the negotiation table trying to fight for you and your most valuable asset? If you come from a place of concern, guys, it's an easier conversation. Remember, moving from purely financial percentages back to the concern of why you're there and the reason why they should hire you, you'll see in our listing presentation, there is going to be a conversation, an entire page to talk about the value and the power of negotiating. And the minute someone else has already negotiated down their fee, it's proven to that seller their negotiation power. Now, I'll go on a limb as well and say my concern for you is that you may hire the wrong person. And instead of me being your agent and them being the buyer's agent, well, now they're going to be your agent and I'm going to bring the buyer. Do you want them fighting for your commission, or do you want me fighting for your commission? Because I have a track record of winning in negotiation. Like, the interesting thing is, and I used that this week actually in a conversation, right? The interesting thing is, as you're sitting in front of that seller, if you've proven your value in negotiating, there is no way they can go and hire someone that is willing to cut their fee from 6% down to 5%. And if you know big picture why you're doing that, you're fighting for their money and yours, you're on the same team. So I wanted to share that conversation just briefly. This week is an important week for us to go back and make sure that we're focused on, right, ultimately providing the value to our client in negotiation power and the value to your business and your hard work. Don't let that commission slip. I would argue that our organization probably leads in average commission. Why? Because we're the most educated, most scripted, most confident group of real estate agents in the industry. There's no other team that's going to be at 2.7 across hundreds and hundreds of agents and thousands of transactions. And my commitment to you is to not let us slip from 2.7 to 2.6 or 2.6 to 2.5. There are people that will pay for your negotiation strength as long as you show up day in and day out, understanding that that's why they're hiring you. There's no other reason for them to hire me. Yep. Do we have the best marketing? Yes. Do we have the best tech? Yep. Do we have the best everything behind us? Yes. But what is my number one skill? Negotiation. Walk into your presentation with that. Understand, if you reduce your commission, you've actually broken that belief about yourself. And we're going to talk about that in just a minute. We're going to talk about that belief in yourself. If you believe that you're the best negotiator, then you'll walk out with a 6% commission. All right. Any ahas? Let's open that up. I know that was a long segment on commission and lots of numbers. Teresa, is your hand up? Maybe not. You were just saying hi. Alex.
I think that looking at the difference between 2.5, 2.75, 3, because I know that I try to do it I think in 1%, but just, and one time is whatever, but when you extrapolate that over 24 or 100, and that's when the numbers really start to come out, that was a huge aha for me. So by stopping it at 1, it's going to stop it at the next one and the next one, and that's going to make me more money.
Yeah, guys, understand, it is difficult to go in and ask for 6%, and I'm going to call on you in a second, Delby. It's difficult to go in and ask for 6% if you don't believe you're worth 6%. People that struggle with asking people for a fee or asking people for money or charge, I mean, I deal with those people all day in all kinds of businesses. There are some self-worth conversations, guys, and that's a deeper conversation. But our organization provides a backdrop of incredible value that you get to wear and own. Every single one of our agents is worth 6% or more. And the challenge is when you begin going from 6 to 5, you believe that you're worth 5%. And I'm not saying there aren't situations or conversations or certain clients that you're going to do that with, guys, right? But when you look at the yearly average, where are you? Where are you personally? It's a quick way to improve your self-worth and value as well. Delby, quick comments.
One of my things is well, one, it does start with mindset and really believing and having the confidence in that. One, if you're part of the #1 organization in the world like Place, part of the #1 company like KW, and then you partner with the #1 team in your area, every one of our partners should have that confidence. But one of the things I never like to talk about commission because it comes up too soon. And my thing with my clients is like, we're not even going to go there until we have a buyer. Like, why would we even talk about a commission when we don't even have a buyer. So right now it's 6%. My job is to negotiate the best deal possible for you. And at that point, if we have to discuss it, we will, but not until then.
Yeah, I love that, Deldy. One of the conversations, and depending on how skilled you are with the presentation and the scripts, I often say this: what I promise you, Mr. Seller or Mrs. Seller, is commission will never get in the way of me closing your home, right? Because part of our mission as an organization that we went through is delivering the dream of homeownership everywhere. Yes. So if that's part of my mission, understand a commission is almost irrelevant. The commission of this home will never get in the way of me putting a deal for you and a buyer. So just know that going in, right? That again, if you say it and believe it and they hear that, it's hard for them to argue with the 6%. And as Deldy says, down the road, and here's what's so interesting, our organization is masterful at not giving up commission as well in the transaction. So I'm not implying that later on give in, because we will not, right? We historically have not. Look at our average commission. But the fact is having that conversation up front allows them to see that you fight for them. I'm in a transaction with one of our own right here on the call right now, representing them. And I'll tell you, he or she would tell you that every single conversation they have with me is about, let me see what I can do to make sure we get a better deal for you. Let me see what I can do to protect your equity. $500 saved is $500 in your pocket. See, if we constantly have that conversation, even while we're in that transaction and negotiating and fighting for them, what do you think they're going to say when they refer you to their friends and their family? The challenge is when we reduce our commission all the time, then what do you think they'll say when they refer you to their friends and family? You quickly become a full service broker to that friends and family 5%er. Be careful, guys. But if you fight for that 1%, right? 5 to 6 or 6 to 7, interestingly enough, there's not a transaction. And see, I believe this, and you can tell, there's not a transaction that I did not earn every penny of my commission back for that client during the negotiations. The negotiations of the price, the negotiations of repairs, the negotiations for concessions, the negotiation at appraisal, the negotiation for the request right before closing, the negotiations at any point in time through that transaction. I promise you, there's not a person of the thousands of people that I have represented that could say, nah, he wasn't worth it. Now, if I believe that, do you think I have any problem getting a fee? No. So as John says in the chat, 90% commission, 10% scripts. Some people would say 90% scripts, 10%, 90% confidence, 10% scripts, commissions on the mind, 10%. It's right in there. So, all right, guys, let's change gears. Thank you. I appreciate you sharing, guys, as well. Alex and Deldy and John in the chat. We're gonna talk about a story that we've talked about a lot. And it's interesting, this has come up. It was the basis truly of our launch program that many of you are experiencing with Marley. But NASA's 7th mission was the 3rd attempt to land someone on the moon. Apollo 11 and Apollo 12 had landed successfully. Apollo 13 came to be known as the most successful failure. Now, we've detailed what happened on Apollo 13 at length in some of our calls. We should go back and we could probably have a series of Apollo 13 calls, mostly for Alex. But I came across something that I had not read before this week, and I wanted to share it with you. On the crew patch for the mission of Apollo 13 were the words ex luna scientia, which means from the moon knowledge. Guys, when they stepped onto that craft, their goal was to go to the moon and bring back knowledge. They were focused on the eventual outcome. Now, did their outcome change? Dramatically, but there's a lesson in that process for us. So as background, for those of you who have not been with us for years, hearing all this story, there were 3 people on Apollo 13. Jim Lovell was the commander. Jim Lovell was known as incredibly even keeled. He was unflappable. He was never ruffled. That's all of us, right? Think about that though. The commander was even keeled, unflappable, never ruffled. If you're a commander, some good qualities to demonstrate. The commander of the module pilot was Jack Swigert. So there were three, right? There were three modules there. There was the command module, right? There was the lunar the command module is where they were, right? That's where they started. The lunar module was that little module that was supposed to send 2 people to the moon, just briefly, right? A short trip to the moon. The lunar module pilot was Fred Hayes. Now, Jack and Fred were chosen because Jack had the best knowledge and command of the command module. Fred had the best knowledge of the lunar module. And Jim was what? Even keel, unflappable, and never ruffled. 3 incredibly knowledgeable people. Now, 55 hours and 56 minutes into that flight, what happened? What did Earth hear? Well, they heard that quote, right? Houston, we have a problem. The oxygen in their tank, right? In tank 2 dropped to 0. And immediately they knew they weren't going to land on the moon. In fact, if anything went wrong, it meant based on procedure that they were not allowed to go to the moon. There was no landing on the moon the minute that oxygen reading went down to 0. It doesn't matter if they fixed it. It doesn't matter if nothing major happened. It just, they knew that they weren't going to the moon. Do you think that disappointment would set in? How do you feel the minute you see or you recognize that you're not going to hit your goal? Could disappointment set in? How do you think or feel the minute you realize that, gosh, I didn't get that listing. That was my goal. It didn't happen. Does disappointment set in? Sure, it does. Do you think they were disappointed? Yes. But here's what happened. They immediately called down. Well, and I say immediately, it actually was a couple minutes before Fred even called back to Houston and said, there's debris floating outside my window. Imagine that. Most of us would be on the phone saying, hey, there's debris. Hey, there's debris. Hey, there's, like, think about how unflappable and calm they were. But the interesting thing is, as research has been done on what happened that day, now more new research shows what actually got them back to home. And you know what it was? Put simply, it was checklists. Guys, checklists got them back home. As way of reference, they were all in this lunar module. And the reality is the only way they were going to get back home is through that lunar module. But they realized they weren't going to get back home unless they shut down that lunar module. They didn't have enough power to get back home. So guess what they had to do? They had to shut down that lunar module and get into, right, they had to shut down the command module and get into that lunar module. The command module is the only one that would get them back home, and all they had was battery power. Powering up the lunar module usually takes just over 2 hours, guys. They did it in 15 minutes. Why and how? Because the knowledge they had of the systems of that module and the lines of instruction that they went through is the reason why they survived. In NASA, they have a phrase called work the problem. Work the problem. They had a problem, right? Because that lunar module was only supposed to support 2 people on a short trip. And now 3 astronauts had to get in there all the way almost back to Earth before returning to the command module. And they followed a procedural checklist. It gave them step-by-step direction for this contingency. But here's the win. As they interviewed these astronauts, not only did they have a step-by-step process, But they said the real win was it freed up mental bandwidth to concentrate on the real issues that had not yet been addressed in their contingency plan. So think about that. If you're not following a process and a problem shows up, where does your energy go? To that problem, to that problem, to that problem, to the stress of the problem. But checklists allow us to focus our mental energy on things other than the actual activity that needs to happen. The checklist, the process, the procedure creates mental bandwidth. Re-entry to the Earth's atmosphere is going to be a challenge. Actually, no one before had ever turned the command module back on mid-flight. No one had. It had never been done. And they came up with a 2-hour plan and checklist to get that command module back on. Now, who was helping them? The hub back home in Houston. But see, if they were not willing to follow the model, if they were not willing to follow that checklist, if they didn't have people skilled enough to build out that checklist, they would have never come home. Jim Lovell said later that if he could do it all over again, yeah, he'd still have liked to have landed on the moon. But after that, he said he would do it all over again, exactly how it happened, because it was the ultimate test of a test pilot. Their long hours of training and following procedure and following rules played a crucial role in their survival. That crew relied 100% on step-by-step procedures called checklists, guys. Simplifying complicated tasks where errors could create extreme consequences is what saved them. Jim Lovell in an interview said that good astronauts understand they are human and they are prone to mistakes. I'd like to say good real estate agents understand that they are human and they are prone to mistakes. Great directors of operations understand they are human and they are prone to mistakes. So what do? We follow process. They also said 3 astronauts in a real small space, checklists can prevent a lot of disagreements. The mission rule said checklists, follow the rules, right? So I started thinking about that in our business, in how our real estate business, our transactions, our teams, all breakdowns come from what? Not following the model, not following checklists, not plugging into those checklists, doing it our own way. Say, you know what, I'm just going to handle this one. We have people across the organization, right? Like even on our own team saying, gosh, I feel better if I just run with this. Well, then head out into the lunar module on your own. The fact is if we look at that as a model, let's bring it, maybe let's bring it just a little bit closer down to Earth. A checklist help astronauts clearly, but real estate's a far cry from space travel. What about air flight, right? Airlines. Pre-flight checklists for airlines ensure safe takeoff. They ensure safe landing. And you know what they're on? They are still on 3x5 cards, guys. Checklists for airlines before they take off and while they land. As an aircraft became more and more complex, the likelihood of mistakes increased. So what did the airline industry actually mandate? Checklists. And they broke down complicated processes into manageable actions. But the win, guys, and this is my takeaway for today, is it gave cognitive effort back to the pilot. The fact is if you feel overwhelmed right now because your production is up, the easiest way to reduce that overwhelm is follow checklists and follow our processes and plug into ops. If operationally you feel overwhelmed, well, guys, we talked to our teams last week that we're rolling out an operational course, how to use Brivity there are teams running 300 deals operationally out of that platform. Unstressed. Why? Because they have their cognitive ability while all else, right, is put on those checklists. Yeah, Rob says, what about healthcare? Great example. Atul Gawande wrote the book Checklist Manifesto. And while he was writing that book, he researched the healthcare industry. You know, surgical checklists have reduced and cut complications and increased mortality or decreased mortality rates by more than 1/3, 30%, right? People live 30% more. You have a 30% more chance of living through what? Checklists. Checklists. Checklists break down complicated processes into manageable actions. Great, we know that. But the win here is it offloads cognitive effort so you could focus on your most pressing concerns. Now, great, but what else can it do? Kirobo Jackson is a professor at Northwestern University. He's written lots of stories of, or not stories, he's written lots of papers on worker productivity. That's what he's studied. And one of his papers is on the effects of checklists on worker production. So he began running some tests, guys. He began to study random businesses to see the effects of these checklists and processes. And he began to study the automobile industry. In fact, he went into mechanic shops. He went into mechanic shops to decide whether or not increased productivity could happen by using checklists. Now, he set a theory for this test. He said, checklists provide an external memory device so you don't miss steps. Think about that, right? How many of us miss steps in any process, right? That checklist is there to provide an external memory device so you don't miss steps. It also provides an external accountability to ensure that task or that step is done properly. Fair? So this is what his research showed. They went into mechanic shops, and he said in some mechanic shops, they handed the mechanic shop owner some checklists, all right? So they provided the shop owner some checklists, simple checklists for the mechanics. So when a car came in, they said, check all these things. This is what your first check looks like. You're gonna check this and this and this and this and this and this. And other shops, they didn't give that checklist to. They just continued along their way, their typical way. Car would come in and the mechanics would do their job, right? They do their quick check over and say, hey, these are the problems. Here's what happened. When they compared the shops that used the checklist with those that didn't, total revenue had gone up by 25% with the shops that use the checklist. Now remember, those checklists were there for the mechanics to check each of the parts of the car. Now, there are two things that jumped out at me. Number one, that checklist removed from memory from those mechanics what they were supposed to check. It drove revenue, right? So if you're bringing your car into the shop, you probably don't wish they had the checklist because they're going to tell you everything that's wrong with your car. But on the flip side of that, can you imagine if it was a safety concern? So that checklist not only drove revenue, it also drove reliability. It drove quality. But here's what it also did. Kirobo Jackson said it not only increased the income of the shop, but many of those mechanics were paid on commission, guys. And they said as they went back into the shop, that revenue equated to those mechanics receiving 1.5% increase in commission over those 3 weeks of using those checklists. Guys, I looked at that and I said, I guarantee you our real estate agents would see an increase in their commission and their revenue if they actually follow the processes that are there for them. Why? Because it eliminates administrative stress and allows you to put your cognitive effort on your most important task, which is what? As an agent, taking care of our clients and finding new ones. Taking care of our clients and finding new ones. Our business is no different than that mechanic shop. The mechanic shops without processes generated 25% less revenue. If we went and said, well, let's look at our top 20%, our top 20% of our agents, the top 20% of our teams, I promise you they are following process and checklist. Now, this was relatively cheap for owners because did they go and increase the commission rates of their mechanics? No, they didn't. All they did was hand them a checklist. And what happened? Their revenue went up. Checklists allow you to take that, keep track of everything out of your cognitive load and focus your efforts on doing the things that you need to do. It's incredibly powerful for us to focus on process. We are a systems business. You bought the system, plug into the system, follow the system. And we recognize that this is going to continue to differentiate our business. So you see a renewed energy and focus by all of leadership on systems and processes. Let's switch gears. Remember, that's our lesson from Apollo 13. Now we're going to take a lesson from a different Apollo, Apollo Ono. Apollo Ono is arguably one of the greatest athletes of our time, right? He was a short track medal winner. I think he has 8 different Olympic gold medals. But he recently wrote a book sort of about his story. It was a difficult story, interestingly enough, but there's a lesson here for us that I wanted to share with you this morning, guys. Apollo Ono was unlike most athletes because he began watching skating when he was 12 years old. Had never put a skate on, guys. At 12 years old, he was watching the Olympics with his dad. He's from Seattle, by the way. And his dad wanted to get him involved in some sort of sport, some sort of activity. And so his dad said, hey, Apollo, do you think you want to skate? And Apollo said, yeah, I think I want to skate. 12 years old, guys. And so his dad committed to him, began to take him up to Vancouver and in Calgary to watch short track skaters, because short track skating isn't super popular in Seattle, by the way. So he was traveling 2.5, 3 hours to watch skaters. And at 12 years old, he would watch them and then go home and he would do what he saw them do. Didn't have a coach at that point, didn't really start training, but his dad put him in front of a model and Apollo started following that model. Guys, by the age of 14, he was invited to Northern New York, to Lake Placid, to begin training for the World Championships. 2 years later, guys, 2 years later, 7 months later, after getting to New York, he won the World Championship, right? He won the world competition. Now, there's a lesson there. Like, he clearly was he was truly gifted at this. He was beating people twice his age. Eventually, he became the captain of that team. He said it would be 7 years before he could even drink with a teammate, and yet he was the captain of that team. But the problem was, guys, and here's my lesson for you. The problem he tells in his book is this. He said, you see, I reached a certain level of success almost naturally. Some of these people have been skating since they were 3 years old, 4 years old, 5 years old. And here's some 12-year-old that shows up at 14 and wins the world. And so after winning world championships, right, during the off season, he went home to Seattle as a teenager. Understand, it's fair. He's 14. And guess what he ate? He ate McDonald's and Burger King and Cheetos all summer. And he came back and he said everybody else had trained all year. But because he had reached a certain level of success almost naturally, he didn't understand how hard it took to compete consistently at a high level. There is a lesson there for us. I thought about that as I listened, and I thought about some of you, some of us that have reached levels of success almost naturally. Gary calls that the natural ceiling of achievement. The fact is, guys, some of us are just good at what we do naturally. You have great, sparkly personalities that make you great salespeople. But guess what? One day you're going to show up, and some of us feel that right now. And you're going to look around and say, well, gosh, they out-trained me. They outworked me. They outfocused me. And that's what happened to him. You know what happened the year that he came back? He came in dead last. Dead last. And he realized he needed to make a decision. If he was going to be good for a long period of time, if he was going to be very good and not just rely on his natural skill and his ability, he had to focus. This is what he said. This may be an unpopular comment, but I understand it. probably at a really deep level. He said this. He said, what he realized was no one has achieved incredible success while living a balanced life. Not an integrated life, that's our word, but a balanced life. He said, obsession is a common trait of high performers. They are obsessed with being good. And he said openly, that obsession comes from different places, guys. I want us to think about ourselves. Sometimes that obsession comes from trauma, right? Where we're trying to deal with trauma that we had earlier in our life, so we become obsessed with something. Sometimes that obsession comes from fear of failure. You're scared that you might fail, so you get obsessed with getting good at something. Sometimes that obsession comes with insecurity. We have insecurities personally, and that drives us to obsession of our craft. But you know what? Obsession leads to performance. Are you obsessed with what you do? He said it's why that person who has seemingly everything in the world still shows up, still gets up, same time, shows up to the same office with intensity to win again. That's obsession. He said, I have something written down in front of me. And he said, I think about this often. And he said, it's with what got me through a lot of Olympics and a lot of world championships and a lot of challenges. He's had a lot of personal challenges in his life, even after the Olympics and after his athletic career. And this is the quote. And I want us to write it down. He said, don't think you are, comma, know you are. Don't think you are, know you are. So how do you do that? He said, well, my gift was short track speed skating gives you immediate feedback. Right? I mean, you get immediate feedback. And it wasn't play a game today and wait 3 days. He said, interestingly enough, right, we would race 3, 4, 6, 9 times in a day. And you get immediate feedback. You know what? We are gifted to be in an industry that we can receive immediate feedback, right? We make a call, there's some immediate feedback. You go on an appointment, you got some immediate feedback. This was his perspective. He said, there are so many races in a day. You either learn from that mistake or it's gone. The mistake is gone, right? Like you have to recalibrate for the here and now is what he said. The previous race doesn't matter unless you learned something, you got information, or there was a lesson. Take that immediate feedback, guys, right? Your coach gives you some feedback, take it. Your clients will give you some feedback, take it. The results of your calls gives you feedback. Take it. Your average commission is giving you some feedback. Take it. Something else he said in a conversation, and I thought of many of you. He said, elite athletes want the ball at the end of the game, right? They want to take that last shot because they believe they can control the outcome. If you find yourself not wanting to pick up the phone, if you find yourself not excited to walk through the door of that seller, if you find yourself not motivated to have that buyer consult, it's probably due to the fact that you don't believe you can control the outcome. Take that feedback and practice. I promise you, the more you practice, the more energy and time you put into that practice, the more you want to put that practice, right, into practice, the more you will be ready. No one wants to practice and script all day and then never use it. But if you find yourself apprehensive, it's because you don't believe you can control the outcome. He said, here's something I want you to couple with don't think you are, know you are, right? Don't think you're a great real estate agent. You are a great real estate agent. And then he said this, I never knew I was going to win, but I knew I had the chance to win. There's some humility there, right? He didn't walk up, he didn't skate up to that line and say, well, I'm winning this one. No, he said, I never knew I was going to win, right? Especially in short track skating, but I knew I had the chance because I had prepared. This is what he said, and we're going to end here, guys, because I know it's the top of the hour. He said, I believed I wanted it more than anybody. I believed I could endure pain more than anybody. I believed I could work harder than anybody. I believed that would give me the absolute right to win, not the ability to win, but he believed he had the right to win this race. Why? Because he worked just as hard as anybody. He endured just as much pain as anybody. He wanted it just as much as anybody. Now, if those three things were true, then guess what? You have the right. You have the right to win. And I loved his perspective on that. He ended with a quote, and this is a Stoic quote, actually, from Nikos Kazantzakis, who wrote the book Report to Greco. This is what he said. He said, don't concern, it sounds philosophical, and it slightly is. So we'll end here, and then we can think about it for the rest of the day. Don't concern yourself with whether you will win or lose. Something like that is God's account, is what Nikos said. But he said this, focus on your struggle to carry it further. That is what concerns you. That is what concerns you. Remember, what did Apollo say? I never knew I was going to win, but I knew I had a chance. Why? Because he had the right to that chance, because of the work that he had put in. All right, guys, that's our lesson. We have a lesson on process and checklist from what? Apollo 13. We have a lesson on not relying on just, well, ceiling of achievement or natural ability from another Apollo Ono. And our tactical focus for this week, commission. Do not give it up. Have concern for your clients. Negotiate for your clients. And while doing so, you'll be negotiating for yourself and your future as well. All right, guys, appreciate the time. Thanks for hanging out with us. Let's make it a great week. Alex, congrats on the wedding. And if I can do anything and help you guys, please let me know. One more thing. We are all invited tomorrow. Tomorrow is the Children's Cancer Association Gala. We have a room. John, if you can send out a message with a link to our virtual happy hour. We're going to be doing a virtual happy hour on Saturday from 4 to 5, and we have a live concert from the Lumineers, and then Storm Large from 5 to 6. Please show up. It'd be awesome to see everybody. We have a live actual gathering in Austin and one in Portland. Our rooms will be shared, so we'll all hang out together. If anyone can make that on Saturday, we greatly appreciate it. Many of us have donated to Children's Cancer Association. Experience Giving has been a huge supporter of that organization. They're thankful for that. John and I have made a donation on behalf of our teams in the amount of $10,000. Zane has been a huge supporter as well, financially and just with the cause. So please show up, just hang out, have a drink with us, watch the Lumineers live. Looking forward to seeing as many of you as possible. And that is tomorrow at 4 p.m. Pacific time. All right, guys, thanks so much.